Halloween night, the one evening when darkness feels a little thicker, when shadows stretch just a bit longer, and when we willingly send our children into the streets dressed as monsters, never considering that something truly monstrous might be waiting. The stories you're about to listen aren't urban legends passed down through generations. These are documented accounts, whispered confessions, and incidents that were quietly buried by those who survived them. 4 families, 4 Halloween nights, 4 doors that should never have been knocked upon. Before you continue, understand this. After tonight, you'll never look at your neighbor's porch light the same way again. You'll hesitate before reaching into that candy bowl, and when you hear children laughing in the dark, you'll wonder if they're really children at all. Story 1. The House with Red Porch Lights. Sarah Martinez will never forget Halloween 2019. Her daughter Emma, 8 years old and dressed as a fairy princess, had been trick-or-treating for barely an hour when they arrived at the old Victorian house on Ashwood Lane. Most parents in their Texas suburbs steered clear of that particular street, not because of any specific incident, but because of a feeling. That inexplicable wrongness that settles in your gut when something isn't right. But Emma insisted. She'd seen the house earlier that week, decorated with elaborate Halloween displays. Realistic tombstones, fog machines, and dozens of carved pumpkins lining the walkway. What caught her attention most were the red porch lights. Something she'd never seen before. Just that house. Then we're heading back, Sarah agreed, already regretting her decision. As they approached, Sarah noticed details that made her skin crawl. The jack-o'-lanterns weren't carved with typical triangle eyes and jagged smiles. Each one bore a realistic human face, twisted in expressions of pure terror. The fog wasn't the usual dry ice vapor. It had a thickness to it, an oily quality that clung to their ankles as they walked up the path. Emma rang the doorbell. The sound that echoed back wasn't a chime, but a low, resonant gong that seemed to vibrate in Sarah's chest. They waited. 30 seconds, a minute. Sarah was about to usher Emma away when the door opened. The man standing there looked ordinary enough at first glance. Mid-50s, gray hair, wearing a cardigan. But his smile was too wide, stretching his face in a way that seemed anatomically impossible. And his eyes, they didn't blink. Not once. Trick or treat, Emma chirped, holding out her pillowcase. The man's smile somehow widened further. A fairy princess. How delightful. But you know, my dear, all tricks require a treat, and all treats require a trick. He produced a bowl filled with full-sized candy bars. The holy grail of Halloween candy. Emma's eyes lit up and she reached forward. That's when Sarah saw the man's other hand, hidden behind the door frame, holding what looked like a digital camera pointed directly at Emma. "Don't touch it," Sarah said sharply, pulling Emma back. The man's expression never changed, but something cold flickered in those unblinking eyes. "Mom," Emma protested, "we're leaving. Now." Sarah practically dragged her daughter down the path, Emma crying about the candy she'd missed. When they reached the sidewalk, Sarah looked back. The man stood in his doorway, still wearing that impossible smile, still staring. Then slowly, deliberately, he raised one hand and waved. A slow, mechanical gesture that sent ice through Sarah's veins. That night, Sarah reported the incident to the police. The officer who took her statement grew pale when she mentioned the address. He excused himself and returned 20 minutes later with a detective. "Mrs. Martinez," the detective said carefully, "the house at 1847 Ashwood Lane has been vacant for 3 years. The previous owner, a man named Douglas Vermeer, was arrested in 2016 for child abduction. He died in prison in 2017. Sarah insisted she'd seen someone. The police agreed to check the property. What they found made local news for exactly 1 day before the story was mysteriously pulled. The house was indeed empty, covered in dust, no electricity, no running water. But in the master bedroom they discovered something that made even seasoned officers nauseous. Hundreds of photographs of children covered every wall, all taken on Halloween night over the course of decades. Each child was photographed reaching for candy, captured in that moment of innocent excitement. And in the newest section, still smelling of fresh developing chemicals, was a photo of Emma. Crystal clear, perfectly focused, showing her reaching toward a bowl of candy. The timestamp read October 31st, 2019, 8:47 p.m. The house was demolished within a week. The official story claimed structural damage, but neighbors whispered about the way construction workers refused to continue after the first day, about the sounds of children's laughter heard echoing from the empty rooms, about the red lights that occasionally flickered in the windows of the vacant lot. Emma stopped trick-or-treating after that year. But every Halloween at exactly 8:47 p.m., Sarah's phone receives a text from an unknown number. It's always the same message: she almost took the candy. Story 2. The Neighborhood Watch. The Riverside Pine subdivision in Oregon prided itself on being the safest community in the county. They had an active neighborhood watch, security cameras at every intersection, and a strict vetting process for new residents. On Halloween 2021, they organized a controlled trick-or-treat event. Every participating house displayed an orange balloon, and a neighborhood watch volunteer was stationed on every block. Marcus and Jennifer Chen thought their twin sons, Kyle and Kevin, would be perfectly safe. The 6-year-olds dressed as superheroes, given explicit instructions to only visit houses with orange balloons, and sent off with a neighborhood watch volunteer named Mr. Peterson trailing behind their group. At 7:15 p.m., Jennifer received a call from Marcus, who'd stayed home to hand out candy. "Did you come back early? I thought I saw Kyle and Kevin in the backyard." Jennifer's blood went cold. "The boys are with me. We're 4 blocks away." Silence on the line, then. "I need you to come home right now." When Jennifer arrived with both boys, she found Marcus standing at the back door, his face drained of color. In the backyard, illuminated by their porch light, were 2 children standing perfectly still. They wore the exact same superhero costumes as Kyle and Kevin, identical down to the custom patches Jennifer had sewn on the capes. Same height, same build, but their faces were wrong, too smooth, too perfect, like wax masks. "Mom?" Kyle whispered. "Why do they look like us?" The figures in the yard didn't move, didn't breathe. For a full minute, the Chen family stood frozen, watching their duplicates stand motionless in the darkness. Then, in perfect synchronization, both figures turned their heads to stare directly at the real Kyle and Kevin. Their mouths opened, and in voices that sounded like recordings played backwards, they spoke. "Trick or treat. We've come for our treats." Marcus called 911 while Jennifer locked every door and window, pulling the boys away from any sight of the backyard. The operator seemed skeptical until she heard the voices in the background. Those wrong, reversed voices chanting, "Trick or treat," over and over. Police arrived within 6 minutes. The officers searched the backyard with flashlights and found nothing. No footprints, no disturbed grass, nothing. But when they reviewed the Chen security camera footage, all 4 officers went silent. The footage showed the 2 duplicate children appearing at exactly 7:14 p.m., materializing in the center of the yard as if walking through an invisible door. They stood motionless until the real Kyle and Kevin arrived home, then began their chant. But the most disturbing part came after the police left. At 11:47 p.m., The security camera captured the duplicates slowly walking backward, as if the footage was in reverse, until they disappeared at the exact spot they'd appeared. The timestamp showed normal forward motion. It was the figures themselves moving in reverse. Jennifer wanted to dismiss it as a cruel prank, but two details made that impossible. First, Kyle had a birthmark on his left wrist, a small crescent shape. In the security footage, clear as day, the duplicate Kyle had the same birthmark in the exact same location. Second, later that night when Jennifer was putting the boys to bed, Kevin asked, "Mom, why did those things know our names? We heard them whispering our names the whole time." The Chen family never told their sons what else they found on the security footage. At 7:16 p.m., before Marcus called Jennifer, the camera briefly captured him opening the back door. The two duplicates had turned to face him, and for just 3 frames, less than a second, the camera captured their faces changing. The smooth, wax-like features melted away to reveal something underneath. Something with too many teeth and eyes that reflected light like a cat's, but with a hungry intelligence that no animal possesses. The neighborhood watch investigated and discovered something that was carefully kept from residents. Over the past 15 years, during every Halloween in Riverside Pines, at least one family reported seeing duplicates of their children. Always between 7 and 8 p.m., always in their own backyards. The reports were dismissed as pranks or hysteria until someone compiled the testimonies and noticed a pattern. Every family who reported seeing duplicates had moved into houses where the previous owners had mysteriously relocated, always within weeks of Halloween, always refusing to explain why. The Chen's house had been sold by the previous family in early November 2020, exactly 1 year before the incident. Marcus and Jennifer listed their house for sale in January 2022. It sold within a week to a young couple with 7-year-old twin daughters. The Chens tried to warn them, but the new owners laughed it off as an attempt to drive down the price for a return sale. The house has been vacant since Halloween 2022. The new family moved out October 31st, leaving all their possessions behind, refusing to speak about what they'd seen. The house remains on the market, and every Halloween, despite being empty, neighbors report seeing lights moving inside and hearing children's voices chanting, "Trick or treat." "We've come for our treats." The orange balloon still hangs from the porch, faded and deflated, never removed by the dozens of real estate agents who've tried and failed to sell the property. Story 3. The Last House on Maple Street. In rural Pennsylvania, houses can be separated by acres of farmland and forest. On Halloween 2020, 15-year-old Jake Morrison and his girlfriend Amy Chen decided to walk the 2-mile stretch of Maple Street to see how much candy they could collect. They were too old for trick-or-treating, they knew, but the pandemic had canceled most Halloween events, and they wanted one last taste of childhood tradition. They'd hit 7 houses when they noticed the 8th, a small farmhouse set back from the road, almost hidden by overgrown trees. No decorations, no porch light, but something drew them forward. A compulsion neither could later explain. "Should we?" Amy asked, already walking toward it. The house looked abandoned at first glance. Peeling paint, broken shutters, a mailbox hanging by one screw. But as they approached, they noticed the windows were clean, and through the curtains they could see warm lamplight. Jake knocked. The sound echoed strangely, as if the house was much larger inside than it appeared. They waited, about to leave, when the door swung open by itself. No creak, no groan. It simply opened, revealing a narrow hallway lit by old-fashioned oil lamps. "Hello?" Jake called out. No response. They should have left. Every instinct screamed at them to run, but that compulsion pulled them forward and they stepped inside. The interior defied the exterior dimensions. The hallway stretched impossibly long, lined with doors on both sides. As they walked, they noticed the doorknobs. Each one was shaped differently. One looked like a child's hand, another like a bird's skull. A third seemed to pulse with a faint heartbeat. "Jake, we need to leave," Amy whispered, but her feet kept moving forward. At the end of the hallway stood a woman in a Victorian-era dress. Her back was to them, but her voice carried clearly. "You've come for treats, haven't you? Everyone who knocks wants treats." She turned around and both teenagers stumbled backward. Her face was young and old simultaneously. Smooth skin but ancient eyes. A kind smile but too many teeth visible behind her lips. "Come into the parlor. I insist." The compulsion strengthened, pulling them through a door that Jake could have sworn wasn't there a moment ago. The parlor looked like a museum piece from the 1890s. Ornate furniture, oil paintings in gilded frames, and a table covered with elaborate Halloween treats. Candied apples, chocolate truffles, cookies decorated with intricate icing. "Take anything you like," the woman said, settling into a high-backed chair. "But first let me tell you about my house." Neither Jake nor Amy could move or speak. The compulsion had frozen them in place, forcing them to listen. "I've lived here for a very long time," she continued. "I watch the world change through my windows. Seasons pass, generations pass. But Halloween night, that's special. On Halloween, the barriers grow thin and sometimes people find my door. People like you." She gestured to the paintings on the walls and Jake's stomach dropped. They weren't paintings. They were windows, and through each one he could see people trapped in frozen moments, reaching for treats, mouths open in silent screams, eyes pleading for help. Some of the clothing styles dated back centuries. "Every person who takes a treat from this house becomes part of my collection," the woman explained. "Not your bodies, those are useless to me. But your moment, your Halloween spirit, your youth, that I preserve. Forever trick-or-treating, forever reaching for candy you'll never taste, forever young and forever mine." The compulsion released them, and Jake grabbed Amy's hand, running for the door they'd entered through. But the hallway had changed. Dozens of doors now, hundreds, all identical, all opening as they passed, revealing glimpses of impossible rooms, a forest under a red sky, a staircase that spiraled into infinity, a room filled with clocks all showing different times. They ran blindly, bursting through a door and tumbling onto cold grass. They were outside, gasping in the October air back on Maple Street. The farmhouse was gone. In its place stood an empty lot overgrown with weeds, no sign it had ever held a structure. Jake and Amy ran the 2 miles home without stopping. They told their parents everything, expecting disbelief, but their families reacted with strange acceptance. Jake's grandfather went pale when he heard the description of the woman. He disappeared into his attic and returned with an old newspaper clipping from 1952. The headline read, "Local children report encounter with witch house on Maple Street." The article detailed an incident nearly identical to Jake and Amy's experience, except those children hadn't escaped. They'd been found the next morning, alive but changed, standing motionless in an empty lot, reaching for something invisible, their eyes glassy and unseeing. The children had recovered physically but never spoke again. They lived normal lifespans but remained mentally absent, as if their consciousness was somewhere else. All 4 died on Halloween night of different years, found in their homes reaching for nothing, smiles frozen on their faces. Jake's grandfather rolled up his sleeve, showing a faded scar on his wrist. "I was one of the lucky ones. I only touched the doorknob before my friend pulled me back. But I still feel it sometimes, that compulsion to return. Every Halloween, something tries to call me back to that lot." Amy's research uncovered reports going back to the 1800s. Always the same story. Always on Maple Street, always a house that shouldn't exist. She found a pattern. Every 7 years, someone disappears from that lot on Halloween night, never to be seen again. 2020 was a 7-year mark. Jake and Amy had been scheduled to be the next additions to the woman's collection. Now, every Halloween, both of them feel it, the compulsion to walk down Maple Street, to find that lot, to search for a door that isn't there. The feeling grows stronger each year. Jake moved to California, putting 3,000 miles between himself and Maple Street. But distance doesn't matter. On Halloween night, no matter where he is, he can hear the woman's voice. "You ran away before taking your treat." How rude. Don't worry, I'm patient. Eventually you'll come back to finish what you started. Everyone always does. Amy started keeping a journal of her compulsions, documenting the pull she feels each Halloween. Her last entry, written on October 31st, 2024, simply reads, "It's getting harder to resist. I don't know how much longer I can fight it. If you're reading this and I've disappeared, don't look for me on Maple Street. There's nothing there to find. I'll be somewhere else, somewhere that only exists one night a year, forever reaching for candy I'll never taste." Her family hasn't heard from her since. Story 4. The Candyman's Route. Every neighborhood has unspoken rules about trick-or-treating. Don't go out alone. Stay in well-lit areas. Never enter someone's house. But in the suburbs of Michigan, parents in the Brookfield community followed one additional rule. If you see the Candyman's van, go home immediately. The Candyman wasn't a person. It was a white conversion van that appeared on Halloween night, driving slowly through neighborhoods, windows tinted black, speakers playing cheerful Halloween music. The van had been spotted on and off for 30 years, always on Halloween, never any other night. On Halloween 2018, 12-year-old Maya Patterson was trick-or-treating with her older brother Dylan and their parents when they heard it. Monster Mash, echoing through the streets, growing louder. Other families immediately corralled their children and headed home, but the Pattersons were new to Brookfield. They didn't know the rule. The van turned onto their street, moving at a crawl. Maya noticed it first, a white van with blacked-out windows, orange and black streamers attached to the antenna, and a sign on the side that read, "Free candy, full-size bars." The music was deafening now, drowning out the sounds of the evening. "Stay close," their father Robert said, sensing something wrong in the way other families were fleeing. The van pulled up alongside them and stopped. The music cut off abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the side door slid open. Inside was darkness. Absolute, consuming darkness that seemed to absorb the streetlight rather than reflect it. But in that darkness they could see candy. Mountains of it. Every type imaginable, all full-sized bars, some brands that didn't exist anymore, some that hadn't been invented yet. A voice came from the darkness, cheerful and warm like a favorite uncle. "Trick or treat. I see we have some new friends in the neighborhood. Come, take as much as you'd like. No tricks here, only treats." Maya took a step forward before Dylan grabbed her arm. "Don't," the voice continued, never losing its friendly tone. "Smart brother you have there, little girl. But I'm not here for you, not yet. You're too young, not enough fear to season you. But you..." The darkness seemed to shift, focusing on Dylan, who was 16. "You're perfect. Teenagers are the best. Old enough to know real fear, young enough to still believe in monsters." Robert pushed both children behind him. "We're leaving." Of course. The voice agreed happily. "But first let me give you something to remember me by. A warning, if you will." Something flew out of the darkness, landing at Robert's feet. It was a full-size chocolate bar, still in its wrapper. But the wrapper was wrong. Instead of a brand name, it had a name written in neat handwriting. Dylan Patterson. Another flew out. Maya Patterson. Then, Robert Patterson, and finally, Susan Patterson, Dylan's mother, who was standing 20 feet away, having frozen in terror at her first glimpse of the van. "There," the voice said with satisfaction. "Now we're all introduced. These are special candies, you see. Whoever eats their candy accepts my invitation. And I do hope you'll accept, Dylan. I haven't had a good Halloween in years. Most people know better than to interact with me anymore." The door began to slide closed, but not before Dylan caught a glimpse of what was in the darkness behind the candy. Faces. Dozens of them. Pale, terrified faces of teenagers, all reaching out, mouths open in silent screams, as if trapped behind glass. The van drove away, music starting up again, but this time it was Monster Mash played in reverse. The cheerful lyrics taking on a demonic quality. The Patterson family didn't go home. They drove straight to the police station, bringing the candy bars with them. The desk sergeant went pale when he saw the wrappers. "Where did you encounter him?" he asked quietly. After hearing their story, the sergeant made a call. Within an hour, the Pattersons were sitting in a conference room with 3 detectives and a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Elena Vasquez, a folklorist from the University of Michigan. Dr. Vasquez explained, "The Candyman van first appeared in 1988. 7 teenagers went missing that Halloween, all from different neighborhoods, all last seen accepting candy from a white van. Their bodies were never found. Since then, the van appears every few years. We've had reports from across Michigan, always on Halloween, always the same MO." She pulled out a file containing dozens of witness statements spanning decades. Common elements emerged. The van only approached teenagers. It always offered personalized candy, and anyone who ate their candy disappeared within 24 hours, never to be seen again. "But here's what makes this case unique," Dr. Vasquez continued. "The van seems to be able to appear in multiple places simultaneously. We've had reports from Detroit, Grand Rapids, and Traverse City on the same night, same time, same van. It's not possible." The candy bars were sent for analysis. The results were disturbing. The chocolate was expired, decades old, but hadn't degraded. The wrappers were handwritten in ink that didn't match any commercial product. And when examined under certain wavelengths of light, text appeared on the wrappers, coordinates and dates. Dylan's coordinates matched his home address. The date was October 31st, 2018, that very night. The police set up protection for the Patterson family, but at 11:47 p.m., all 4 officers outside their house reported the same thing. They heard Monster Mash playing, growing louder, but saw nothing. Then, simultaneously, all 4 officers blacked out for exactly 3 minutes. When they woke, the front door of the Patterson house was wide open. Inside, they found Robert, Susan, and Maya unconscious but unharmed. Dylan was gone. His window was open, and on his bed lay his personalized candy bar, now unwrapped with a single bite taken out of it. Search parties found nothing. K9 units lost his scent at the sidewalk as if he'd simply vanished. But security cameras from houses across the neighborhood showed something that made investigators' blood run cold. At 11:47 p.m., the white van appeared on 6 different streets simultaneously. On each street, the footage showed Dylan Patterson walking toward the van, expressionless, getting inside. 6 different Dylans, 6 different vans, all at the exact same moment. When the vans drove away, they didn't just disappear, they faded, becoming translucent, then gone, as if they'd never existed in physical space at all. Maya woke the next morning with no memory of what happened after 11:45 p.m. Her parents remembered hearing music, feeling an overwhelming drowsiness, then nothing. But on Maya's pillow was a note written in the same handwriting from the candy wrappers. "Thank you for accepting my invitation, Dylan. You'll make an excellent addition to my route. Don't worry, Halloween only lasts one night in your world, but in my van, it's always October 31st. You'll never age, never change, forever celebrating my favorite holiday. To the Patterson family, Maya still has 3 years before she's the right age. I'll be back for her when she turns 16. Tell her to enjoy her freedom while it lasts. And please don't eat the candy. I do hate it when people waste perfectly good treats. See you in 2021. The Candyman. The FBI got involved, launching an investigation into the disappearances connected to the van. They found records going back further than 1988. Missing persons reports from the 1950s, 1920s, even the 1890s, all describing a similar vehicle appropriate to the era. A horse-drawn carriage, a Model T, etc., offering candy to teenagers on Halloween. Over 150 teenagers have disappeared after encounters with the Candyman's vehicle. Not a single body has ever been recovered. No witnesses have ever seen a driver. No one who's eaten their personalized candy has ever been seen again. Maya Patterson turned 16 on October 15, 2025, 11 days before Halloween. Her family has moved 7 times, changed their names, and tried every method to hide. But 3 days ago, a package arrived at their current address with no return label. Inside was a single full-sized candy bar in a handwritten wrapper. It read, Maya Patterson, aged to perfection, ready for collection, October 31st, 2025. On Halloween night, somewhere in Michigan, a white van will drive through residential streets playing cheerful music. Parents will hurry their children inside, following the unspoken rule they've passed down for generations. And somewhere in that van, in darkness that exists outside normal space and time, Dylan Patterson and 150 other teenagers will be trapped in an eternal Halloween, forever trick-or-treating in a nightmare that never ends, kept alive and terrified to season the Candyman's favorite holiday. The Patterson family has 7 days to prepare. They've contacted Dr. Vasquez, who's assembled a team to try to prevent Maya's disappearance. But in her research, she discovered one final chilling detail. No one who's ever been targeted by the Candyman has avoided collection. The only question is whether they disappear quietly, or whether the Candyman decides to make a show of it. And according to the note, the Candyman is very excited about collecting Maya. He's had 3 years to plan something special. Finally, 4 stories, 4 Halloween nights, 4 families whose lives were forever altered by answering a door, following a compulsion, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong moment. The authorities in these 4 communities have tried to suppress these stories, fearing panic or mockery. But every year, new reports surface. A door that shouldn't exist. Children who aren't quite right. A van playing cheerful music in the dark. Halloween is supposed to be about harmless scares, about children dressed as monsters collecting candy from friendly neighbors. But these stories remind us that some doors lead to places we weren't meant to go. Some treats come with terrible prices. And some tricks aren't magic, they're something far worse. Next Halloween, when you're walking through your neighborhood, maybe you'll think twice about that house with unusual decorations. Maybe you'll grip your children's hands a little tighter. Maybe you'll hear music in the distance and choose a different street. Because out there, beyond the cheerful facade of jack-o'-lanterns and costume parties, something waits. Something patient. Something that knows that eventually, inevitably, someone will knock on its door, accept its invitation, or take its candy. And when they do, it will be ready. Sweet dreams. And whatever you do, don't answer the door at 11:47 p.m. on Halloween night. You never know who or what might be trick-or-treating for you.